Now then, viewers and friends, got me notes down here. This week we're just continuing in a similar vein, and living your life is the way we do. There's a lot of things that happen that are the same, but in my opinion it's a lot better than going to work 5 days a week, going to exactly the same place, setting off exactly at the right time, same time, and not wanting to go there. But this week we've got a bit about that coast redwood at the top end of the county. I had to go and visit that with a contractor, and we did social distancing and all that sort of thing, so it's not as if we were close together and we were obeying all the rules. We got some bicycle refurbishment and a little bit of rant about that, and then the leeks got planted out, and we did some window glazing, and I was talking about putty and all that sort of thing. And there's the continuation of the lathe headstock refurbishment, and then I test it with by turning some more handles, and then a friend of mine suggested that showing a few of the exercises that I've gathered over the years to reduce stress in the mind and body, especially in the shoulders and the upper back. So we'll probably start a little series about that, but only a little bit every time. Yeah. And also, do you remember Thorn Warbler? And well, there we go. He made this trader axe. He makes them to order. You got to order one if you want one. Yeah. He also, I got a little parcel today, and I'm just coming forwards. So let's just get in the light. There we go. A homemade padlock. It's quite delightful. And there's a handwritten note. And his writing's better than mine. Now then, after seeing your bespoke greenhouse door, I thought I'd send you this bespoke Viking padlock. I've made a good few of these, even made one, it's on its way to Norway, and is securing a shed door from modern Vikings, and it continues. Yep. So there you go. Yeah. So we have a homemade Viking padlock, heavy duty steel, yeah, and it's got its own special key, which actually there was a little drawing in this, and I had to fiddle with this to actually work out how the key worked. And then once I'd fiddled with it and then looked at the drawing made sense. But the drawing made a bit of sense to start with, and then once you've worked how it works, the drawing makes lots of sense, which is about usual for my way of thinking. But thank you very much for that, Thorn Warbler. It's a real joy. So let's carry on with the part 8. Cheers for now. We're in the woods. Yeah, forestry doesn't stop for many things because it's such a long-term thing. But in previous videos we've looked at this coast redwood that has coppiced from the stump, and Dave the contractor last year he thinned round it so we can see more of it. I remember, oh yeah, 18 years ago or something, that this was just 6 foot high, and now because it's been thinned and thinned round, you can see those 3 main stems coming up. So let's just go and have a look. Whee! Falling over. So hopefully there's part of the original stump, and that's the thing about coast redwood, it will coppice, which is brilliant. And these now are about 14 inches in diameter, and I'm guessing they're best part of 16 meters high. So there you go, imperial and metric measurements. And Dave, who's just over there, is just going to stand in front of this Wellantonia here. So there's some scale. What's that, about 6 foot across? And it's absolutely, it's a skyrocket. And he's running away now. It's getting out of shot. It's just, I'm imagining this is, I think in the time of the big plant hunters, like Menzies and people like that, that's when these started coming into the country. But it's ginormous. But there you go, just an interesting bit. And there's another one over here that Dave's going to stand in front of for scale. And it's not quite so big, but it has a different form. Well, there you go. And a tree hugger in sight. And this one has got the sort of form of a veteran Scots pine. It's not so high and it's spread out and it's quite glorious. And we were just discussing, just walking forward slowly, in the crotch of that big branch. I don't want to go too zoom in too much because you get wobbly cam. There's that black stain. And I'm just thinking maybe there's a point where the water collects there, so there's a bit of a stagnant pool. Who can tell? Need a climber to go up there and find out. Just an interesting bit.
Even bigger one behind there.
Ah yeah, look, behind it there's another one. Looky this. This came out of the scrapyard virtually as it is. It's only had a wipe down, and the only thing that was wrong with it is the cable that went to the rear derailleur gear down there. So it comes, where does it come? It comes along that bottom rail and then up that main tube. And they're easily available. I think it was about £3.50 delivered, stainless steel. That was damaged. That was it. It's like the madness continues. Yeah. Anyway, Jerry's made this basket, and just there is a bracket. There, you can see it. Okay, so what we want to do, or what I want to do, want a flat plate bolted on there which comes down and underneath. But of course that would be, unless that was really thick, there'd be always a tendency for it to bend. So we could do with just a brace that went from there just to there, not actually, in fact there's a hole there so it could be bolted there. We'll work out something, and it can bolt onto those two holes there. Yeah, so it's only a small bracket really, but I'll have to do a quick bit of designing. And as you remember from the last video, if I design something, it might very well change at least 2 or 3 times before we get there. And the wind is in the west and the sun is shining and the battery volts are up, which is why the turbine has been switched off by the charge controllers. So I've just clamped this bit of steel here, and we'll just mark out these slots, and we just want to cut it off about there when we've drilled the holes. So that'll do, perfect. So we use this Meddings drill, and I've centre punched, and I could use a drill vise, or I could just keep this full length. There we go. And now I can cut that off. Okay, so I've got that plate just loosely bolted on there, and effectively what we want to do is make that shape. So we want a piece of this flat that comes down there and across there. And I think that's the right angle. Okay. And we need to come down two and a quarter inches and along about 4 inches. And that's the angle. So let's go and do that. So we've got to take into account the thickness of the steel when we bend this. So and we can always trim a bit off. So let's go for 2 3/8. Okay. So in the vise, and give it a hefty belt. Here we go. And it's always really useful to have a vise outside. This leg vise is just brilliant. Starter motors, all that sort of thing. Okay. That's more tricky than I thought. Yeah, that's good. Do you want to see? There you go. So I've welded that together and put a T-piece on the end, and then we can drill a couple of holes through that and have some sort of fixing to the basket. It can come up through the weave and have some big washers on the other side. Not too tight. It'll need nylock washers or some nylock nuts or something like that, just so it holds it in place without crushing the basket work. So we're moving on. It's not too bad. The idea is getting there. Right, so there we go. Yep, but so we need to go from there to there with a bracket just to stop bend there, because it's actually happening. There's a big hole there, so it's weaker there. So we go from there to there with a little thin bit of something that I can find. Have to have a bend on it and come down and weld to there, which will be a bit tricky. There's the bracket all bolted in, and we'll just have a look at the basket bolted down, and there we go. Just used a couple of long gutter bolts to hold that in place with a bit of thin timber, and of course the gutter bolts have got a rounded head, so that makes it smoother. So I'm just going to put some of these leeks out. This has been dug over with plenty of muck in there. And of course the traditional way of planting leeks was with a dibber, but then that's because that was bare root plants, whereas these are grown in pots and the roots are just coming to the bottom. So there we go. I'm just picking the big ones. You see that root there? It's all the way along there, so it's well timed for it. And you want to plant them deeper than they are in the pots, so you get a nice long stem. See, those roots are now going round and round, so they really want to be out and planted. So we'll just crack on with that and get all those done. They're about 4 inches apart, I suppose. That'll do, but they want plenty of muck in there to get them growing well. So there we go. Got 2 rows in. It rained a couple of days ago, reasonably heavily. So it's ideal time to put these out. And then if you really want to, as they grow on, you can earth them up a little bit to blanch more of the stem. But these are planted quite deeply, so that'll be good enough, I think. We've gone off track somewhere. There we go. Let me introduce you to Arthur. He's a grizzled old tomcat, but he's very pleasant and mild-mannered. He's not one of these aggressive ones, but he comes and sees us every 2 or 3 days, has a bit of breakfast, snoozles for a while, especially now on the warm concrete, and then he wanders off again. But as I say, he's very mild-mannered, and look, but He's obviously a fighter because his ears are battered. But, you know, he wanders around here. He just sits quietly or lays quietly, thinking, oh, they might give me some breakfast at some point. So there you go. So we're on with the windows, and I'm just getting the putty softened up and warmed up. You can't use putty unless it's really warm. Like years ago, when I was working as a carpenter joiner, you know, we'd be doing windows in the middle of winter, and you'd have to have the putty inside somewhere for an hour to warm up, and then work it like this over a radiator or a storage heater, just to get it warmed up enough so that it would work. Yeah, and you don't want any lumps in it or anything like that. So you've got to work at it. So I'm just going to do that. Probably take me 10 minutes. So this is warmed up now. It's not bad. So we'll just put a bit of putty just there, just to bed the glass onto. See how sticky it's got now? We've really got to work at it. I'll come back to you when this is done. I just need to put a little spacer there. There we go. Gas shock horror, world news. Andy Reynolds has bought something. So you put a spacer there just to, especially on double glazing units, just so that if there any water gets there, it doesn't stick there. It isn't able to soak up. That's not bad. There's a little bit. It wants to go that way a bit. That's better. Yeah, it's a little bit tight, this one. I should have probably ordered it just a mil or two smaller, but it'll be right. Push that right in. Yeah. So that that bedding putty squeezes out. There we go. So we've got a gap under there, which is great. Yeah. So yeah, I bought something, but you really can't make your own double glazing units. You're bound to get dust and muck in between the two sheets of glass because of static and all sorts of things. So these are made in Boston. Little company there, just phone them up, give them the size, and these are 424, so 4 mil of glass either side and 20 mil in between. And they're not very expensive. But you see, the windows, which would be the major part, I've made myself from timber that I've milled, and there's a whole series of videos which I'll put the link up in the corner as normal, going through the whole process from converting from the raw sawn timber through to the finished article. See, when we came here in the mid-80s, built the windows, but we used all second-hand glass, so cut every piece, and that was fine then. But now sort of we're upgrading to double glazing, and the windows were starting to, just the occasional corner of one of the casements was just starting to get a little bit, not rotten, but a bit soft. So it was time to do something. But I can't remember when I started this project, but it might have been 4 years ago. But there we've got that. So all we want to do is put a pin in there and a pin in there. And this is all part of low impact and gaining skills. If you don't have the skills, then do something to enable you to get them. Right, you slide the chisel on the glass. That way you can't hit it. And you want that pin out of the way of the face putties. So I'm just going to work this putty a bit more. So low impact is about what you do and what you don't do, and there's a lump there, and it's all based on your circumstances, what you can and you can't do. But it's like, okay, so you've got to husband your resources to avoid financial slavery, which means that you don't spend unnecessarily, but you don't have to wear a hair shirt, as it were, but you have to be sensible about things. I know people who go, oh, I can't have anything second hand. Oh, no, 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 no. And I don't know where that attitude comes from. Maybe it's learned from their parents or something like that. Everything has to be perfect or it's no good. And then if you're in that situation where everything has to be perfect, then when something that is new gets 2 or 3 years old, it's not perfect anymore. So it has to be changed, which is completely and utterly counterproductive. Yeah, and also it leads to financial slavery. Yeah, you're always in debt, that sort of thing. So so you've got to have that attitude. That's an unfair statement. If you want to pursue a low impact lifestyle, then it's beneficial to have that sort of mindset. And because one of the major problems with the world as far as human impact is population. Now this is going to upset a few people, but don't get upset, because being angry or upset only makes you feel bad. Okay, so you've got to have that sort of attitude of, I mean, I don't mind if you have a different viewpoint, but there's no point getting angry about my viewpoint. It only does you harm. Yeah, it gives you disease, yeah, and I'm going to cover that at some point a bit later about stress. But population, it's a problem, so don't have any more kids. Yeah, it's from this point on. It's like we need to reduce the population. Oh, there won't be enough people, there won't be enough young people to look after the old people. Well, that's the way it goes, but you know, it's like the whaling industry. Oh, we've got to keep these jobs, oh yes, we've got to keep doing that. And they would be quite willing to continue killing whales until there were none left. And then it'd be, yeah, oh, it's not our fault. Of course it is. So you've got to take a considered view about things. Right, I'll just get this done and then we'll start doing the face putties. Okay, this is a putty knife. Yeah, I haven't done this for a while and I'm doing it live, So there you go. So we do that, and we have to have the putty in the right condition. And I'm just bending the putty knife. Proper glazers do this quite quickly. But they've been doing it for years. But because you don't do it all the time, doesn't stop you from doing it and having a go. If it's really rubbish, yeah, then you can wet your finger and just run down there and smooth it out. And if it's really bad, then dig it out and start again. There's only one way to learn. But you have to have the putty in the right condition to start with. And then when you get to the end, of course, it interferes with what you've done before. I'm going to stop now. I'm going to stop this live bit because I've got to think what I'm doing. And here's another spring or early summer view. There's the May blossom, and it is the first week of May. Yeah, and this has been out for a few days now. But there you go, the hawthorn blossom. This is a strip of shelter belt that we planted probably 10 years ago. These larch are getting up there. And there's a Scots pine in there. And some hawthorn and some birch. But this is quite interesting. This was here when we got this piece of ground. This is comfrey, and it will be in flower very shortly. Loads of it. In fact, there's a few flowers down there, but I won't zoom in. I'll take the camera down there. The breeze behind me now. But this is what I've been doing this morning, treating this gate and the gate posts. I think it was treated about 3 years ago, so it was time, and it's dry, so that wanted doing. And here's the comfrey. There we go, the comfrey flowers, and that'll flower for ages. And of course those gardeners of us will know, and bumblebees are at it again, will know that these comfrey leaves, when steeped in water, make a good organic fertiliser. But apparently it stinks like mad. I've never done it. Can we get this bumblebee? Can you see those pollen sacs? Great big yellow things. Yeah, oh, that's a good, well behaved. There's a nice bumblebee. That'll do. And of course, when the putties dry off as a skin, then's the time to paint them. And paint just slightly onto the glass. Just slightly, so you seal between the putty and the glass. But don't leave it too long, or else all of the putty dries up, and then its tendency to crack. So low impact and lower consumption, so it's really advisable to think about what you're doing, and because you're completely helpless if you have no skills and are reliant upon other people. Yeah, so if you're totally reliant upon the goodwill of an organisation, then it's a good idea to do something about that. Yeah, so yeah, life is about choices, and as soon as you start making choices that are reducing stress in your life and increasing your self-reliance, yeah, then those choices tend to compound and life gets easier. There's nothing wrong with working hard. There's nothing wrong with earning money. It's what you do with it. Yeah, I mean, if you're working hard in the oil industry, then that's really quite counterproductive, isn't it? We can all agree on that now. So what I said about there's nothing wrong with earning money and nothing wrong with working hard, that's entirely correct. But it's what you're working at also. So low impact and self-reliance spreads throughout the whole of your life. Now then, guess what we're making? Those of you who've seen one of my recent videos will know what we're on with. There's points on here, and that's nichrome wire or bar. But we put the lathe back together, as you could see, and I even, gas shock horror, painted it. But the points line up. So I'm just going to do wobbly cam and show that before I slide the tailstock back and fit the tool rest again. Because obviously for this there's a bit of wood turning to do. There we go, they're in line, perfect. So we'll crack on. Okay, let's just see what happens. That seems to be running smoothly enough. Now, stress. Body and mind. And the two have got to work together. And as I was saying earlier, if you take choices with a heart, which means that it's got real meaning rather than temporary, and you take choices so that you're not put under pressure all the time, then life can be easier. And as far as stress is concerned, I mean, you've always got to crack on, and it's in the psyche of most humans to try and improve things, but you've got to decide what's an improvement and what's just a sidetrack or tangent. But as far as stress is concerned, a lot of it can be absorbed into the shoulders and the back. And there are one or two exercises that I found over the years to help significantly. Now, I don't want this turned into a health exercise sort of video, but I'm going to show you a couple of exercises, and I might do a couple now and a couple in the next video. And it's just things that you can do in that odd moment, especially before you start work. It's important to sort of tune the body up, as it were, wake it up and get everything moving properly. I notice in my back that if I've been doing quite a lot of, say, lifting heavy firewood, if I warm up and stretch everything in the morning before I start, then that improves things. And it's a matter of getting all those vertebrae and the muscles around the vertebra and around the shoulders to be moving. It's very easy to absorb stress in there, and then the muscles start to seize up. So effectively, it's like most things in life, you've got to work at it a bit to see the benefit. So we'll crack on with that in a minute. Okay, we'll just do a couple of exercises. I'm just shaking the hands. Okay, then it's what you do is this. Okay, but you don't just move the arms. Right, you go and you're extending, and everything's moving right down here, and you can feel the top of your spine stretching up. If you just do this, it does nothing. You've got to extend that power out. and I cross the right hand in front of the left. This time it's the left hand in front of the right. And just extend out as much as possible. It'll take a while for you to realise what I'm talking about, but there comes a point when actually, as you do that, you start to lift your heels off the floor because you're stretching your back. Okay, a dozen of those. So that is one, because there's one of each. Right, and then the next one is you put the hands together like that and you keep the elbows out. Don't do that. And then you go lift, and that pulls the whole back, lifts it all up. So not that, you've got to really lift from the shoulders and the back. That'll do for this time. Practice it, you'll be surprised how your back loosens up. I'm just going to turn a couple of handles, as you've already guessed. There we are, I'll just make another one. So that headstock new mount seemed to work alright. I'm quite pleased with that. And that was reasonably dry ash. It had been kicking around in the workshop for over a year. And it was cutting quite nicely and smoothly. So I think we've got some success there, and another design change is probably not necessary. So that is the, where are we? The handles made. And we'll continue with that project when we get a moment. There we go, one beautiful lettuce. So that's the end of another week. I will catch up with you soon. Cheers for now.